I never thought my wedding day would come with sirens' uniforms and a showdown that felt more like a movie than a celebration. I was standing there in my ivory dress, heart racing, when I saw my fiance's mother waving down police officers like she was rescuing the world from some disaster. Her voice carried across the garden, sharp, certain, dripping with judgment. She's a fraud, a liar, a gold digger. You have to stop this wedding. Guests froze mid-conversation. Phones slid out of purses, and I felt every pair of eyes shift toward me. But the officers didn't reach for cuffs. They looked at me, straightened their backs, and said one word. "Ma'am." And in that moment, her face drained of color like she'd seen a ghost. But let me rewind, because to really understand how we got there, you have to know where I came from. 6 months earlier, my life was simple. My name is Rachel, and I taught kindergarten in a small town outside Milwaukee. My days were filled with sticky fingers, lopsided drawings, and kids proudly telling me that the sun is yellow because crayons say so. I lived in a one-bedroom walk-up with creaky stairs and a coffee machine that sputtered more than it brewed. And you know what? I loved it. That tiny apartment, those messy kids, the predictability of my world. It was mine. One Tuesday morning, I was late as usual, fumbling with loose change in the corner coffee shop, when a voice behind me said, "Don't worry about it. I've got you." He slid a 5 across the counter so casually you'd think it was nothing. I turned ready to argue, but stopped cold. He wasn't flashy, just tall, broad shoulders under a gray sweater that looked understated but expensive. His smile was warm, almost shy, like he wasn't used to being noticed. We ended up talking for 20 minutes while my lesson plan sat forgotten in my bag. He asked about my kids, and he actually listened when I told him about one little boy convinced that dinosaurs were just super chickens. He laughed in a way that made me feel lighter. His name was Daniel. What I didn't know then was that Daniel Wright was worth billions, yes, with a B. He'd built a security software empire before he was 30, but in that coffee shop, he was just a guy who bought me a latte. We started dating, and for months, I didn't have a clue about his real life. He kept things simple: movies at the small-town theater, burgers from a diner, walks in the park. He came to my apartment and swore my spaghetti was better than anything Michelin-starred. He blended into my little world like he was made for it. The proposal was just as quiet. A Sunday morning on my tiny balcony, the smell of burnt toast in the air, and he got down on one knee with a ring so simple it almost looked antique. His voice shook as he said, "Rachel, you've shown me what happiness really feels like. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished. That's when I met his family. And that's when my real battle began. The Wright estate wasn't just big. It was the kind of old money sprawl that makes you realize you're stepping into another universe. Acres of land fountains that probably cost more than my entire salary, a house with more windows than I could count. Daniel squeezed my hand and whispered, "Just be yourself. They'll love you." But the second his mother, Eleanor Wright, opened the door, I knew that wasn't true. She was polished perfection, silver hair, tailored cream dress jewelry that probably had its own security detail. Her handshake was cold, her smile tighter than a drum. "So, you're Rachel," she said, like my name left a bitter taste in her mouth. At dinner, her questions came sugar-coated but sharp. "A kindergarten teacher. How charming. But tell me, dear, what's your long-term plan? Surely you don't intend to stay in such a modest profession?" When I mentioned I hadn't traveled much, she arched an eyebrow. "Well, Daniel spends quite a lot of time overseas. I do hope you won't embarrass him." And then the dagger. "Of course, we'll need to discuss a prenuptial agreement." Each sentence was a test I could never pass. By dessert, I felt 2 inches tall. And every time Daniel tried to defend me, she brushed him off like a child who didn't know better. After that night, Eleanor made it her mission to dismantle me. She called vendors behind my back, changed orders, tried to upgrade everything in ways that erased what Daniel and I wanted. Darling, surely you don't want paper menus. That's so provincial. She hired a private investigator too. I didn't find out until later that she had me followed my phone records, pulled my mail tracked. She was looking for proof I was after his money. And the truth is, I did have a secret. One I'd hidden even from Daniel. But it wasn't what Eleanor thought. There were days I disappeared, times I canceled dates, last-minute phone calls. I answered in another room. I saw the confusion in Daniel's eyes, the quiet hurt. But I couldn't explain not yet. Lives depended on my silence, protocols tied my hands. 2 weeks before the wedding, Eleanor showed up at my apartment with a manila folder stuffed with photos and documents. She stormed inside like she owned the place and slammed it onto my table. "I knew it," she hissed. "You've been sneaking around. Who are you really? Some con artist? Some criminal?" I stood there in my wedding dress, stunned by her fury, and said quietly, "You don't know anything about me." She jabbed a manicured finger in my face. "I know enough. And over my dead body, will you marry my son?" She left with a promise she'd stop the wedding no matter what. The morning of the ceremony, everything unraveled. The caterer called to say the order had been canceled. The photographer thought the location changed. Musicians were told the wedding was off. My maid of honor, my sister Lily, ran interference. But by the time I slipped into my dress, my hands were shaking. Not because I doubted Daniel, but because I knew Eleanor wasn't done. When we arrived at the garden pavilion, I saw her at the entrance speaking animatedly to 2 uniformed police officers. Her face was smug, satisfied, like she'd finally cornered me. "She's lying to my son," she told them loudly. "She's dangerous. You need to arrest her before she ruins his life." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones went up to record. Daniel rushed to her side, demanding, "Mom, what are you doing?" She pressed a hand to his chest, all false calm. "I'm protecting you. I could have run. I could have broken down." Instead, I lifted my chin and walked straight to the officers. My dress trailed behind me. My pulse thundered in my ears, but my voice was steady. "I'm Rachel Carter, the bride. Is there a problem?" The older officer, a woman with kind but sharp eyes, looked at me, then at her partner. Something shifted. Her posture straightened. Her voice softened. "Ma'am, could you state your full name for us? Rachel Elizabeth Carter." They exchanged a glance I knew well, a look I'd seen in briefing rooms and across battlefields. Then, as if on instinct, both of them snapped into a full military salute. Major Carter, the female officer, said, her tone now filled with respect. "It's an honor." The crowd went silent. Eleanor's jaw dropped, her skin pale as marble. Daniel stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. The officer turned to the guests, her voice carrying across the stunned gathering. "This woman isn't a criminal. She's a decorated combat veteran of the United States Army. She served multiple tours overseas, most recently in a classified mission that saved American lives. The behavior her future mother-in-law found suspicious. Those were mandatory debriefings, medical evaluations, and security clearances. She wasn't hiding a scheme. She was honoring her oath." The younger officer added firmly, "Major Carter has been awarded the Bronze Star, the Meritorious Service Medal, and the Combat Action Badge. While some of you were worried about floral arrangements, she was risking her life for people she didn't even know." Murmurs spread. Heads turned toward Eleanor, whose confident mask had crumbled. Daniel whispered, "All those calls. The canceled dates." I nodded, eyes burning. Medical checkups, debriefings, things I couldn't talk about. From the crowd, Daniel's uncle Quiet, until now, stepped forward. His voice cracked as he said, "You served in the 82nd Airborne." I blinked, surprised. He nodded. So did I. 30 years ago. Once airborne, always airborne. He turned to Eleanor, his expression steel. This woman has done more for this country in one mission than most people do in a lifetime. You should be ashamed. And just like that, the tide turned. One by one, people in the crowd began speaking up. A business partner whose son was deployed overseas. My school principal whose father was a Vietnam vet. Even some of Eleanor's friends shifted uncomfortably, their support for her evaporating. Eleanor sputtered, "I was only trying to protect my son." How was I supposed to know? Daniel's voice was quiet, but cut sharper than any shout. "You could have trusted me. You could have trusted her. But instead, you tried to destroy the woman I love." The female officer asked gently, "Major, would you like us to remain as honor guard for your ceremony?" I looked at Daniel, at the guests, who now stared with newfound respect, and nodded. I'd be honored. 30 minutes later, I walked down the aisle, flanked by 6 officers in dress uniforms, saluting as I passed. My eyes met Eleanor's in the front row, her face streaked with tears, her lips shaping 2 words, "I'm sorry." The ceremony was simple, but powerful. When Daniel and I exchanged vows, it wasn't just love we promised. It was honesty, trust, and the courage to face whatever came next together. Later at the reception, Eleanor approached me. Her voice trembled. "Rachel, I owe you an apology bigger than anything I know how to give. I wasn't protecting Daniel. I was protecting my idea of what his life should look like. I judged you without knowing you. Thank you for your service and for making him happier than I've ever seen." Months later, we built a home that was ours, not a palace, not a statement, just a place filled with warmth. Eleanor surprised me by volunteering at a veterans hospital, slowly learning that heroes don't always look like what you expect. As for me, I went back to teaching, back to glue sticks and alphabet songs, but with a new understanding that service takes many forms on battlefields. Yes, but also in classrooms, in homes, in the quiet ways we show up for each other. And sometimes the people judged the harshest turn out to be the ones carrying the heaviest stories. So I'll leave you with this. What do you think was Eleanor? Just a mother protecting her son? Or was she blinded by pride and prejudice? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I know this story will stir up strong opinions. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that just might change the way you see the world.